What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Bets and Ball Games with Edwards and Greeson. We are recording at 1 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, July 9th. Sorry, no show last week. The 4th of July um, got in the way, so we're going to do two shows this week. We're going to start with today. We're going to do Kentucky football and talk about some other things. And before we get started, let's tell you about our good friends Bet Online, your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season, from baseball, golf, soccer, right to all the top fights in UFC, MMA, and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE, that's all caps BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet Online, the game starts here. What's up, Mr. Greeson? How we doing?
Doing great. Hope everybody enjoyed America's birthday. It was fun here for the Greeson clan. Got to go to the lake, got a little sun, had a lot of fun. I know you had a cocktail or 70, so hope your liver is going to be up to handle all things SEC and Kentucky Wildcats today.
Yes, the liver has been resting ever since Sunday morning. So this is day 3 of rest for the liver. So it was kind of banged up on Sunday, but we're doing good now. All right, so we're gonna hit on a few things before we get to Kentucky. Let's start with the updated presidential odds, because we mentioned them the day after the debate, and at that time Biden was minus one only. We felt like only minus 140 to be the Democratic nominee. But so the latest stats, and what's this website called? Because our good friends at Bet Online have their political odds are currently off the board. So what's that site called?
Well, the where I got my numbers was a site called electionbettingodds.com, which averages all the various sites that are posting odds you can find on the election. And I got the link from a story in the Las Vegas Journal Review, a Review Journal, I think.
Review Journal. Yeah. And so those odds are Kamala, the plus 127 favorite now to be the Democrat nominee, and Biden at plus 183. Now, to be the president, Trump is now a minus 159 chalk, Biden at plus 450, and Kamala at plus 500. So the odds have shifted drastically since the debate debacle. Do you feel like the Democrats are now like trying to shove him out?
Absolutely. I mean, I think they've turned on Biden completely. I mean, you get stories like the heiress to the Disney fortune is saying she's going to quit supporting all Democrats if Biden runs, because she fears that Republicans will sweep both House, Senate, and the Oval Office if Biden's atop a weak ticket. A guy like Van Jones, the commentator on CNN, who, when talking about the Democrats refers to we, not unlike how Mike Greenberg refers to the New York Jets. So he's now saying either way they're probably going to run Kamala. I mean, Biden gave an interview Friday night, and it was lost in a July 4th news cycle with George Stephanopoulos. And I mean, Stephanopoulos, I thought, asked fair questions, but Biden's responses were and this was his exact phrase: it was a bad episode, is how he described his debate performance.
Right.
That's like a bad episode is when Fonzie jumped the shark in Happy Days. That wasn't a bad episode. That was a debacle. I mean, and in betting parlance, it's hard for me to remember in the course of now 12 days something that was believed to be such a foregone conclusion that you could not bet on Biden being the Democratic nominee to now he's an underdog.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I was shocked that morning. Sorry, excuse me. That he was minus 140.
Right.
Because like you said, it was a foregone conclusion. And then he was only minus 140. And now here we are less than 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
I think we're like 11 or 12 days later. And now he's a plus 183 behind Kamala. I'm a little surprised that nobody else, anybody else besides Kamala, is in that mix.
Well, I am too, because a lot of the polling numbers, and polls are very difficult. I mean, unless you're talking about Lech Walesa, polls are very difficult to comprehend. And one of the reasons that is because it's such a small sample size compared to something like a political election. But the only Democrat that I have seen that is favored over Trump is Michelle Obama.
Gotcha. But she's got no interest, right?
Why would she?
Or, I mean, seemingly. Why would she?
Hell,
exactly. All right.
All the qualified candidates don't have any interest.
Right. Yeah. All right. Moving on. So we have someone in the SEC who decided to return to school. She's been twice featured in SI swimsuit, which has gone so far downhill, but not in terms of Livy Dunn. Livy Dunn's returning to school, and her boyfriend has become, well, an NL All-Star and someone that you've been betting on a little bit.
Paul Skenes, the former #1 overall pick, who the Pirates called up in May 11th, was his major league debut this year. And as a rookie, he has been the best comparison I can draw to it is he's been very much like Kerry Wood was when he was a rookie. He is must-see TV. He throws electrically hard. I mean, one of his starts earlier this year, he had 17 pitches in triple digits out of like 70. I mean, that's just obscene. So he's a multiple pitch guy, of course, but a guy whose fastball is so dominant. If you're not sitting fastball, you're not going to hit it, and which makes everything else look so much more devastating. But he's 5-0 on the year, but he'd be much better than that if his bullpen had not let him down in 3 of his last 4 starts. I have been riding Skenes in the first 5 innings, just about every time he's gotten the ball. I'm not saying it's a LSU offensive overlock like we enjoyed this fall, but it is currently in a must-bet place for me. And he had I'm happy he made the All-Star team, and I hope they give him the ball to start. If the rotation works out with the All-Star game next week, because he's one of those guys. He's a Ohtani, an Acuna, a Bryce Harper. They're fun to watch do what they do because it's just surreal.
Right.
And Livy Dunn, I mean, she's our all-time career leader in nil money, right?
Right. Yes. Yes, indeed.
So, and it's not like there's a professional gymnastics league you can go and cash in on. So she's coming back for a 5th year of tumbling. So God bless her.
Yeah.
Make that cash while you can, brother.
Yeah. I wonder how much SI Swim pays their models. Surely they don't do it free to have the prestige of SI Swim. Surely.
Oh, man. I can remember in the 80s, SI Swimsuit Edition was, man, that was a glorious second Thursday in February for teenage Jay Greeson.
Yes. Elle Macpherson. And then, it really started to crank up when Heidi Klum was in her 20s and Marissa Miller, Ronnie Cycli's wife, Elsa Benitez, I believe, ex-wife now. But
all right, you've got too many of those committed to memory. You don't have one of those /teenage boy / serial killer rooms with a whole bunch of things pinned on the wall upstairs, do you?
I'm bitter at Recycling because he scored 33 and beat the Gators in the Sweet 16 while Dwayne Chinchis only had 6 and fouled out because Cycling was dunking on him all game. All right, we're going to have a discussion about some SEC NFL quarterbacks. But let's jump into the Kentucky stuff now, and then hold that for the end. Just because you got that hard out, so let's make sure we got Kentucky completely covered. So the Kentucky Wildcats 2024. I'm going to give you all of the Bet Online numbers before we get our conversation started. So our good friends at Bet Online, they have Kentucky season win total at 6.5. The over is slightly favored, minus 120. If you like the under, it is minus 110. Their odds to make the CFP are 10-1 to win the CFP, 200-1 to win the SEC, 100-1. And they are like Vanderbilt, like Ole Miss, well, obviously like Oklahoma and Texas because they haven't even, or they're about to play. Am I forgetting somebody? I think everybody in the West had made the SEC championship game at least once, but Kentucky and Vandy had not. Or I'm sorry, Ole Miss had not. But my only point is Kentucky's never been to the SEC championship game, much less won it, and those odds are 100-1. Heisman, Brock Vandegrift, new quarterback, transfer from Georgia, 5-star out of high school, 4-star transfer, 150 to 1. All right. I'm not betting on any of those odds, the long shot odds, and I presume you aren't either.
No chance. It's too tough of a mountain to get to. I mean, in truth, if you want to roll the dice about at 10 to, did you say 10-1 to get in the college football playoff?
Yeah.
Well, give me Brock Vandegrift at 150-1 on the Heisman then, because if they're going to get there, he's going to have done something that is truly to the level of his 5-star pedigree coming out of high school.
Right. And let's be clear now, just because he hadn't gotten much playing time, I mean, he's been behind some studs. So
yes, he has.
It's not an indictment that, we haven't seen much of him, in my opinion. Okay. Let me go through some other, just some details about Kentucky, basically, just some stats and whatnot. So last year, 7-6, both straight up and against the spread. They're returning 8 starters on offense, 10 on defense. They returned 36 lettermen. They lost 23. Their net yards last year, minus 183. They were minus 2 in turnover margin. Their offense averaged 29.1 points per game. Their defense gave up an average of 25.8 points per game. According to the 247 Sports Composite, they had the number 24 overall recruiting class in terms of transfer specific guys. Number 21, 39 total commits. Only 12 were four stars, no 5 stars. 13 total transfers, 4 are 4 stars, and they're all studs. We got Jamon Dumas Johnson, linebacker from Georgia. We've got Vandegrift. We have got Ray Cottrell from Texas A&M, and he's a wide receiver. And then we got the running back from Ohio State, Chip Trayanum. And forgive me if I butchered that pronunciation. Liam Cohen is left again. I forget if he went back to the NFL or if it was a health issue. But anyway, the new OC is Bush Ham. All right, hold on. Bush Hamden, and he was the OC at Boise State last year and Missouri the year before that. We'll get to the schedule here shortly. All right, Stoops is now 73-65 straight up, 66-69-3 ATS, going into the 12th year of his tenure. I throw it back to you. I will just share some Phil Steele stuff. So, preseason All-American for Phil Steele. And I should do they call is it Dion or Dione Walker, the stud
I
defensive
think it's
tackle?
Dion. Yeah,
I think it's Dion
and
too.
he's a
Yeah.
monster now. That guy's going to be an
Yes.
NFL dude.
Oh yeah, big time. So he's preseason second team All American in Phil Steele, and Barryon Brown as a kick returner is preseason second team All American. In terms of preseason All SEC on the first team, we've got Walker and Brown, and then we've got Maxwell Hairston, their cornerback, who had a monster season last year. And then on the second team, we've got Dumas Johnson at linebacker, the transfer from Georgia. On the third team, we've got veteran center Eli Cox, and we've got linebacker De'Aric Jackson. And on the fourth team All SEC preseason per Phil Steele, we've got the offensive tackle Marcus Cox and the veteran edge rusher JJ Weaver. In terms of games of the year, none of the out of Circa, FanDuel, DraftKings, and BetOnline. The only game they have is Kentucky against Louisville. Kentucky's won 5 in a row, both straight up and against the spread in what I believe they call the Governor's Cup. And those lines for that game are either pick 'em or -1. And FanDuel actually has -1.5 Kentucky's way. All right. Any thoughts on any of that, or we can just talk about their best players or whatever you got on the tip of your tongue. Let's hear
Well,
it.
I think it's really important to. Last year, Kentucky was about as middle of the road as you could possibly be, because in addition to 7-6, which is really down the middle of the road, especially since it was 6-6 or 7-5 with a loss in the bowl game, their point differential was less than 4. They were, I think, 58th in the country in points per game and 62nd in the country in points allowed. I mean, out of 133 teams, that's just really right in the middle of everybody in the country. But then you think about what Stoops has built and how much experience they have coming back. I mean, you mentioned it. Was that 18 starters? And I think we know what the defense is going to be, because there were 11 guys in the SEC last year who had 7 or more sacks. Kentucky had 2 of them, and they're both back. And that's Walker and Weaver. Then I think if you're a Kentucky fan, why would you not have super high hopes for Brock Vandagriff? Now, granted, he's one of the biggest swing transfers, not only in the SEC, but probably the country. But as you perfectly said, it's not like he was sitting behind chopped liver in Athens. I mean, it's a guy who won back-to-back national championships, and then he sat behind Carson Beck, who could be the number 1 overall pick in the draft next year. So he gets an opportunity and delivers, because he's got the size and he spins it now. And he's got 2 dudes on the perimeter. He and
love
Brown.
Dane Key.
Yes.
And Brown.
He and Brown combined for 85 catches for more than 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns last year. And they're both back. And now they got a better quarterback to work with. So you got to expect those numbers to at least go up. My 2 big questions
I
right
think
now.
Dane Key.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, is Stoops really good at this, or is he just better than anybody Kentucky's ever had?
That's a great question. And I don't know the answer, but I know one thing. When it looked there for a minute like he might go to Texas A&M, I don't think many Kentucky fans were up in arms. You remember that was the rumor?
And I know some Texas A&M fans who were not tickled by it.
Oh, livid. They were, I got a brother-in-law. He was one of them. Yes. So,
but and I don't even know if that's fair to Stoops, because he has turned around. You want to guess how many Kentucky players, football players now, not basketball, football players, have been drafted in the NFL since 2001? 19. I mean, he has overhauled a team that was right there with Kentucky as a perennial punching bag. I mean, a lot of those lists of longest in-conference win streak against were teams against Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, he's had 2 10-win seasons. I believe is it 8? I think it's 8 bowl games in a row, and they were very close to getting in a bowl game year 2 and year 3, way back 2014 and 15. What I was going to say a minute ago was I think Dane Key is one of the most underrated players in the whole league. I mean, he destroyed Florida as a true freshman. He was making some big time plays against Clemson in that bowl. By the way, that Clemson bowl game, that thing got really, I don't know if you were watching, but that game got really fun really fast in the mid third quarter last year, and I thought it was one of the best bowl games of the year. But one more guy they've added to the wide receiver room is Jamori Macklin, which I assume is Jeremy Macklin's cousin or some relation. And at North Texas last year, he was first team all AAC and had 1,004 receiving yards and 17.6 yard per reception average. So Vandegrift has got some dudes to throw the ball to, and yeah. So
and I don't mean that disparagingly about Stoops. I really don't. I just was wondering,
right.
ballpark question, because you cannot help but really respect how he's built that program to where it's there. I don't know if they're ever going to be an SEC championship contender in Lexington. I mean, they haven't proven to be, but they compete every Saturday, and you better show up and play, or they're going to hand you an L. And he's built it with almost every year they've got a defensive front seven that in 3 years you're going to look up and go, damn, that guy used to play at Kentucky, and he's making plays on Sunday. And their offensive line is sneaky good. And I mean, and they are consistently, year in, year out, have at least multiple dudes on the all-name team. Who was the Smoke kid a couple of years ago?
Kavosi Smoke.
They got a couple of DB guys. They got Quashid Scott, Jaquavius Marshall. I mean, they've got some guys now that'll if you can hit a triple word Scrabble on a couple of these names, you are going to blow the doors off the score pad.
Yes. And we'll get into the schedule here in a second, but we'll throw this out. They have 8 home games this year, and I meant to do this morning to go through the SEC and see if anybody else had 8 home games. If so, I doubt it's very many. Let me throw out a couple more things. Okay, so Phil Steele's national unit rankings have them number 22 at receiver. I think they're better than that. Number 17 O-line, back to what you were talking about with Weaver and Walker. Number 9 D-line, number 13 linebacker, number 32 DB, number 61 special teams. QB and running back, they were not ranked, and in the SEC unit rankings, they were 11th at quarterback and 15th at running back. Yeah. So anything else to add before we jump into the schedule?
Well, I would say, and we'll go game by game, but while it's a huge advantage to have 8 home games, of course, they cannot be happy with the SEC offense that their second bye week is after Tennessee and before Murray State, after a 3-game gauntlet of Florida, Auburn, and Tennessee.
And both of their open dates are ahead of game. I mean, you want an open date ahead of a big game. Their open date is ahead of Vanderbilt and then ahead of Murray State. So yeah, that's not advantageous. Now, the only team that has 2 weeks to prepare for Kentucky is Tennessee, and that'll be when Kentucky is playing its 4th game in 4 weeks. And like you just noted, a pretty tough 3-game stretch at Florida, Auburn at home, and at Tennessee. All right, let's jump into this schedule. And as usual, They opened with 4 games at home, and in week 1 against Southern Miss, they're either a 25 or 26-point favorite at most books. So I assume we're going to give them a dub there.
Yeah, and I kind of got an eye on that one, especially once we start to get a better feel. That could be Brock meet World kind of 45-10 type of tail whipping. And uh, man, and I know this is an SEC 16 platform, but there was a day and time that you did not want to see Southern Miss on your favorite SEC team schedule, and now they are crap.
Jeff Bowers, isn't that the
Well,
name of our guy that was there forever? I believe so.
well,
Yeah.
the run that they had with of course with Brett Favre, and then they had the running back that the Falcons took in the first round, and then they just almost always had some obscene athlete that would make 7 plays. They ruined Auburn's homecoming, I think, 2 times when I was in school there.
Oh, they would go to like 2 SEC houses per year under Jeff Bowers. I think I'm remembering his name correctly, and they would always play tough.
Yes.
Always play tough, and won outright on a few occasions. Um, yeah, because I remember back in the day, I would bet on them as big underdogs quite often. One thing I did skip over that I did just want to note here, I pulled up Vandergrift's stats. So he only threw 3 passes in his first 2 years. Last year, played sparingly in 8 games, but was 12 of 18, 165 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and 5 rushing attempts for 39 yards, 7.8 yards per carry average. Obviously, huge or a very small sample size, but figured I would throw it out anyway. All right, week 2, South Carolina. I mean, that'll be a tightly lined game, but I gotta go. I gotta go Kentucky there.
Yeah, I do too. At home, I think they've got the better of the new quarterbacks, or at least we perceive him to be the better of the new quarterbacks.
Sure.
And I think not necessarily a coin flip game, because I can see this being, depending on how week 1 goes, but I could see this being north of a touchdown spread in Lexington. This is one of those games that all that experience coming back will greatly help the Wildcats.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with the quarterback advantage and being at home. And yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if it's more than 7. All right. It'll be a double-digit dog situation. I would imagine in the 14 to 17 range when they host Georgia in week 3. And as we discussed in our Georgia conversation, we both like Georgia there. Week 4, they host Ohio, and there is no more Curtis Rourke at Ohio. In fact, where did he go? I'm blanking on where he went. Maybe Indiana, but anyhow, we're going to call him 3-1 with a W over Ohio.
Yes, and another scheduled ding against the Wildcats. If anybody thinks Georgia would be looking ahead with Alabama late in September, Georgia has an open week following the Kentucky game. So they will not be looking beyond anything in front of their skis headed to Lexington.
Yes. And then at Ole Miss, which I'm going to call an L for the Wildcats.
Yeah. What do you think that number will be? North of 14?
I'm thinking probably right at 14. Well, it depends on how Vandergrift, it'll depend on how they played against Georgia and South Carolina. But right now, I would probably have to say Ole Miss 14. I think probably just right at 14 would be my thinking there. All right, so 3-2. We're both going to give them a win against Vanderbilt. 4-2.
Yes.
All right, now here's the 2 tough ones. Here are the 2 tough ones: at Florida and Auburn at home. So what do you got there?
I think Auburn's going to be better than a lot of people expect. I don't know how good Florida's going to be, and this is also to a point in the season that your boy Billy Bob may have a whole lot of wolves outside the locker room.
Oh
Now,
yes.
so
Go ahead.
are those kids looking to transfer? Are those kids polishing up the resume? Are your stars looking around and going, "Oh, my arm, it's broken," because they don't want to get hurt and affect their draft stock? I mean, the
Right.
Gators are such an enigma this year because of the different. There's talent there, but there's also so many speed bumps that could lead to needing transmission work that could lead to totaling out the program. So I actually think Auburn's freshman wide receivers are going to be good. I think that game in Lexington could be a lot of fun, but I don't know if you got to give off what we've seen or what we perceive or expect. As an Auburn graduate, I'd rather have Brock Vandegrift than Peyton Thorne.
Yes. So Florida plays at Tennessee the week before they host Kentucky. I'm going to give my Gators a W there. What do you think? And by the way, Kentucky has won 3 in a row over Florida, which is a bit concerning, if you ask me. Seeing as we had won, I believe, 31 in a row and then 33 of 34, but have now lost 3 in a row to the Kitty Cats.
I'm
Kentucky at Florida.
I'm gonna defer to you on this one, but I'm actually thinking I think Kentucky finds a way against Auburn because Auburn's got to go to Missouri the week before. I mean, that's to Columbia, Missouri for a team that's a hell of a lot better than a lot of people are going to know, and then come back home and then go back to Lexington. Yeah, that's a difficult SEC V right there.
Yeah, I'm going to give Kentucky a win against Auburn as well. So that would make them, let's see,
that's 5-3.
5-3, and then at Tennessee again. Let me mention Tennessee's got 2 weeks to prepare. Kentucky 4th game in 4 weeks. I'm gonna take the Vols there. And by the way, Kentucky is 1-18 straight up, 5-14 ATS in Knoxville at Neyland since 1986. So 5-4 for me. You got Tennessee there?
Of course.
So we're 5-4. Open date, we both have W's at home to Murray State, 6-4, and at Texas an L. And so It'll come down. The win total comes down to Louisville. And I've been betting Kentucky in this rivalry against Louisville for a long time, and I didn't last year. And I was really pissed that I didn't, because they handled them, and Ray Davis had a monster game. But they just own Louisville, even when they're not the better team. In fact, let me look through here. Okay, so in 19 at home, they were only a 3.5-point favorite at home. Okay, they didn't play in 20. In 21, they were a 3-point underdog and won 52-21. And let me backtrack to 19. They won 45-13. And then in 22, they were only favored by 3 and they win 26-13. Last year, they're a 7.5-point dog and they win 38-31. So they're not just winning and covering. They're winning and covering. Well, they're just giving out ass beatings except for last year, but they were a 7.5-point dog and still won by 7. So I got them 7-5. What do you think on Kentucky Louisville?
Well, and I agree with you. And I thought I couldn't help but, and you were rattling off the numbers. I couldn't help but think if anybody just thinks Vegas is guessing, think about the numbers you've laid out. The win total over under is 6.5. It's going to quite possibly come down to the last game of the season, which Kentucky at home is either pick 'em or a 1-point favorite. So it's a seesaw on a seesaw. And I mean, you want to talk about an either way type of program. But I think 2 things. One, I love if you can find Kentucky at even or -1 against Louisville, and I like Satterfield at Louisville. I think he's a good football coach, but Stoops
No,
is
Brom.
light years ahead of him.
You meant Brom.
I meant Brom. Yes, I meant Brom. I 100% meant Brom.
Yeah.
I think he's a very good football coach, but he's got years to go to catch up with what Stoops has been able to put in as an infrastructure. And the swing game for your over-under is Auburn.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the other 6 wins are that big of a stretch. It's 3 pretty easy non-conferences: Kentucky, Louisville, and
in
South Carolina.
In terms of tough games,
South
Carolina.
The 5 base W's are your 3 non-conference, South Carolina and Vandy, and then Louisville and Auburn would get you to 7. But I don't think the ceiling's much higher than 7. I mean, maybe they beat Florida and win 8, which puzzles
they
me.
Could win at Florida.
Which puzzles me that 10-1. I would expect there to be a 40-1 to get to the playoff, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would, and maybe they're just being a little not as generous as they should be,
or just hedging what Vandergrift could be. Which, if that's the case, I don't know how you could get Vandergrift at 150-1 to win the Heisman.
Right. I think he's going to be good, but you just never know when he hasn't had. But like I was looking on some Twitter highlights this morning, and like you mentioned it earlier, he's got an arm on him, and he throws a tight spiral, and and I love their receivers. As we mentioned, I love Brown, I love Key. I think Macklin is going to be really good. But like you were just saying. Like I'm saying, for conversation purposes, I'm going to go over. I lean over. Probably not going to bet it, but like you just said, in fact, the only bet I would make on Kentucky is I would bet them pick them or -1 against Louisville right now, and I think that line will probably be a little bit bigger come November 30th.
I mean, and I think there's a real chance that this offense could be better than we're even giving it credit for because of the receivers you mentioned, the clips that should give all Kentucky fans great hope in terms of the quarterback. And then you're talking about not just returning starters on the offensive line, but they've got 4 guys who with at least 15 or more starts. So you're talking about multi-year returning starters on the offensive line. And if there's anything that you want to look at in the magazines and the preseasons about returning dudes, almost always the teams that have much better years than most people expect have got one of those offensive line that have like 80+ combined starts, and they come in there and they just maul people. And I think Kentucky could be really good and still finish 8-4.
And the non-returning starter on the O-line is Gerald Mincey, a transfer from Tennessee who started 14 games at Tennessee the last 2 years. So veteran offensive line. And they were known to have really good offensive lines there for a while, but the last 2 years, not so much. But maybe they're getting back to that this year. All right, so tell them about Jay's Plays and the 5 at 10. Because we're going to wrap this bad boy up, but we're going to be back later this week to talk about South Carolina.
Well, Jay's Plays is my afternoon email with the 2, 3, 4 favorite plays of the day. You can sign up. It's free at timesfreepress.com, where you can also find my 5 at 10, which is my morning column every Monday through Friday. I have now, as of this morning, written 3,476 consecutive Monday through Fridays. Christmas, snow days, July 4th, there was one. Since the last Monday of October when Cam Newton was at Auburn, every Monday through Friday, there has been a 5 at 10.
That is impressive. And where's the unit count on Jay's Plays? Are we north of 90?
No, we're teetering in the high plus 87 units. Went 2-1 last night. The Reds, Andrew Abbott is another pitcher that I have developed a man crush on because he's cashing checks for me. And Chris Sale in the first 5 innings last night of the Braves extra inning win delivered because, man, I know it's not SEC, but Alex Anthopoulos, the Braves GM, traded Vaughn Grissom for Chris Sale, and the Red Sox gave them $17 million. Chris Sale has 11 wins and a 2.7 ERA. Now, he goes tonight, and I would be backing him. But the Braves won in the first 5 last night, and the Reds handled their business against the Rockies.
Is Vaughn Marquise's son?
No, I don't think so. Brother Marquise, my brother? No, I don't think so. Yeah. But he's also hitting this year after the deal. He's hitting a robust 148 and has not played in the majors since June 1st. How's that deal looking?
Wow. Not very good. Not very good. All right. You can check out all my content at majorwager.com. Oh, and I got to give you credit. Southeastern 16. And I did not say that correctly on the intro. We have rebranded. We are now Southeastern 16. So thanks to our good friends
Sweet
at Bet
16
Online.
As a lot of people like to call it. Sweet 16.
What? Sweet 16. I like that. You are correct. For Jay Greeson, I am Brian Edwards. We'll be doing the Gamecocks later this week, and we will talk to you then. We're over and out.